Welcome back to another deep dive into movie weapons. Today, we're returning to the adventure that defined our childhoods. The Mummy Returns from 2001. 8 years after Rick O'Connell first faced Imhotep, our heroes are back with an even bigger arsenal of weapons to analyze. This sequel earned $435 million at the box office and gave us some of the most memorable action scenes of the early 2000s. Set in 1933, the film takes place 8 years after the original, and the advancement in available weapons really shows. From Thompson submachine guns to traditional Medjay swords, we're going to explore every piece of firepower in this epic adventure. So grab your archaeology tools and let's dive into the expanded arsenal of The Mummy Returns. First up, we have Rick O'Connell's new favorite toy, the Thompson M1928A1 submachine gun. This beast of a weapon appears throughout the film, most memorably when Rick dual wields them during the London townhouse fight. The Thompson submachine gun, often called the Tommy gun or Chicago typewriter, was invented by General John T. Thompson in 1918. He wanted to create a one-man, handheld machine gun to help break the stalemate of trench warfare in World War I. By the time his Auto Ordnance Company perfected the design, the war had ended. The M1928. A1 variant we see in the film was actually a later improvement on the original M1921 design. It featured a delayed blowback action using the Blish lock principle, which Thompson believed would make the gun more reliable. The weapon fired the powerful 45 ACP cartridge at a rate of 600 to 725 rounds per minute. With its distinctive vertical foregrip, finned barrel, and cuts compensator to reduce muzzle climb, the Thompson became an icon of American firepower. What makes Rick's use historically interesting is that by 1933, the Thompson had gained a notorious reputation. During Prohibition, gangsters loved these guns for their firepower and intimidation factor. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929 involved Thompson submachine guns, which led to increased public concern about automatic weapons. Law enforcement agencies started adopting them to match the firepower of criminals. The U.S. military wouldn't officially adopt the Thompson until 1938, though some units had been testing them since the 1920s. In the movie, Rick handles the Thompsons like they weigh nothing, but in reality, an M1928A1 with a 50-round drum magazine weighed about 23 pounds. That's why most soldiers preferred the 20 or 30-round stick magazines, which Rick smartly uses during his dual-wielding scene. The price tag was also hefty, around $200 in the 1930s, which equals about $4,000 today. This made the Thompson one of the most expensive weapons of its time. Moving to the British forces in the film, we see extensive use of the Lee Enfield No. 1 Mark III rifle. This weapon appears with the soldiers at the British Museum and throughout various action sequences. The Lee Enfield series became one of the longest-serving military rifles in history, and for good reason. Introduced in 1907, the No. 1 Mark III was the main British infantry rifle during World War I and continued serving through World War II and beyond. The rifle's designer, James Paris Lee, created an innovative box magazine system that held 10 rounds of .303 British ammunition. This gave British troops twice the magazine capacity of most enemy rifles. Combined with the smooth bolt action designed by the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield, trained soldiers could achieve remarkable rates of fire. The Mad Minute drill required soldiers to fire at least 15 aimed shots in 60 seconds, though many could manage 20 to 30 rounds. What made the Lee Enfield special was its rear locking bolt design. While this made the action theoretically weaker than front locking bolts like the Mauser, it allowed for much faster cycling. The bolt handle was perfectly positioned for rapid operation, and the rifle's excellent balance made it ideal for both aimed fire and rapid shooting. British soldiers were trained to work the bolt with their thumb and forefinger while keeping their other fingers on the trigger, allowing incredibly fast follow-up shots. By 1933, when our movie takes place, the Lee Enfield had already proven itself in countless colonial conflicts and the Great War. Over 17 million Lee Enfield rifles were produced in various marks and models. The rifle's accuracy was excellent out to 600 yards, though most combat happened at much closer ranges. The distinctive sound of rapid Lee-Enfield fire was so intense that German troops in World War I sometimes believed they were facing machine guns. Next, we have the iconic Webbley Mark VI revolver, carried by multiple characters including Evelyn and several British officers. The Webbley revolver represents the last of the great British military revolvers. Adopted in 1915 during World War I, this massive handgun fired the powerful .455 Webbley cartridge and became synonymous with British military service. The Webbley's most distinctive feature was its top brake action. Push the lever on the frame and the barrel and cylinder pivot down, automatically ejecting all 6 spent cases. This made reloading much faster than traditional gate-loading revolvers like the Colt single-action Army. A trained user could reload a Webbley in under 5 seconds, compared to 20 or 30 seconds for gate-loading revolvers. The .455 Webbley cartridge was a real stopper, firing a 265-grain bullet at about 650 feet per second. While this seems slow by modern standards, the heavy bullet delivered tremendous, shocking power. British officers believed in stopping power over penetration, and the Webbley delivered. The revolver's solid frame and simple mechanism made it incredibly reliable in harsh conditions, from the mud of Flanders to the deserts of North Africa. What's historically accurate about the film's portrayal is that by 1933, many Webbley revolvers were in civilian hands. After World War I, thousands of surplus Webbleys were sold commercially. The British military was starting to transition to the Enfield No. 2 revolver in .38 caliber, making the older .455 Webbleys available on the civilian market. This explains why our heroes could realistically acquire these powerful handguns for their Egyptian adventures. The Webbley Company produced over 300,000 Mark VI revolvers between 1915 and 1923. Many saw service in World War II, despite being officially replaced. The revolver's robust construction meant that examples from World War I were still perfectly serviceable decades later. Some Commonwealth forces used Webbleys into the 1960s, making it one of the longest-serving military handguns. Now for something really special, the Winchester Model 1887 lever-action shotgun. This appears in several action sequences and represents one of the most innovative firearms designs of the late 1800s. John Browning designed this shotgun in 1887 at Winchester's request, though he actually preferred pump-action designs. Winchester wanted a lever action to match their successful rifle line. The Model 1887 was the first truly successful repeating shotgun. It held 5 rounds in a tubular magazine under the barrel, with 1 in the chamber for 6 total shots. The lever action was strong enough to handle powerful 12-gauge black powder shells, and later models were proofed for smokeless powder. The action was complex but robust, using a rolling block design that Browning adapted from artillery pieces. What made the 1887 special was its combination of firepower and rate of fire. A skilled shooter could empty all 6 rounds in under 4 seconds while maintaining reasonable accuracy. The 20-inch barrel version seen in the film was popular for guard duty and express messengers. The full-length 30 and 32-inch barrel versions were marketed to hunters and law enforcement. By 1933, the Model 1887 was already considered somewhat obsolete. Winchester had discontinued production in 1899 in favor of Browning's superior Model 1897 pump-action. However, thousands remained in circulation, particularly in remote areas where their robust construction and ability to handle various ammunition made them valuable. The lever action required more maintenance than pump guns, but was less likely to jam from user error. The movie's portrayal of the 1887's firepower is actually pretty accurate. With buckshot loads, these shotguns were devastating at close range. Each shell could contain 9 pellets of 00 buckshot, essentially firing 9 small bullets with each trigger pull. At the distances shown in the film, this would indeed be incredibly effective. The lever action cycling is correctly shown as smooth, but requiring significant hand movement compared to pump actions. Returning from the first film, we see the Mauser C96 semi-automatic pistol make another appearance. This distinctive pistol with its broom handle grip and wooden shoulder stock remains one of the most recognizable firearms in cinema. Since we covered its history in the first film's analysis, let's focus on what's new about its portrayal in the returns. By 1933, the C-96 had evolved from its original 1896 design. The most common variant in circulation was the M1930, which featured improved sights and the option for detachable magazines instead of stripper clips. Many C-96 pistols had been converted to fire the 7.63 by 25mm Mauser cartridge, which was becoming more common than the original 7.65 by 25mm Borchardt round. What's particularly interesting about the C-96's appearance in this film is that by the 1930s, these pistols had become favorites of Chinese warlords and adventurers in the Far East. Mauser had sold hundreds of thousands to China when European sales declined after World War I. This historical detail makes their presence in Egypt quite plausible, as weapons often traveled along trade routes between Asia and Africa. The film correctly shows the C-96's unique loading system. Without a detachable magazine, most C-96 pistols were loaded from the top using 10-round stripper clips. The bolt had to be locked back, the clip inserted, and the rounds pushed down into the fixed magazine. This took practice but could be done quickly by experienced users. The distinctive sound of the C-96's action cycling is accurately reproduced in the film's sound design. By 1933, the C-96 was facing competition from more modern designs like the Browning High Power, but its reliability and powerful cartridge kept it popular. The 7.63 by 25mm Mauser round could penetrate car doors and light cover that would stop lesser pistols. With its shoulder stock attached, the C-96 became a compact carbine with an effective range over 200 meters. Time to bring out the heavy firepower with the Lewis gun. This light machine gun appears mounted on vehicles and used by Med-J warriors in several scenes. Invented by U.S. Army Colonel Isaac Newton Lewis in 1911, this weapon was actually rejected by the U.S. military initially, leading Lewis to take his design to Europe, where it became a massive success. The Lewis gun's most distinctive feature was its aluminum barrel shroud and radiator fins. As the gun fired, air was drawn through the shroud to cool the barrel, allowing sustained fire without water cooling. This made the Lewis gun much more portable than water-cooled machine guns like the Vickers or Maxim. At 28 pounds, it was light enough for one man to carry and operate. The weapon fired the same .303 British round as the Lee Enfield rifle at about 500 to 600 rounds per minute. Its pan magazine held 47 rounds, though 97-round pans were available for aircraft use. The magazine mounted on top of the receiver and rotated as it fed, creating the Lewis gun's distinctive appearance. Changing magazines took only a few seconds with practice. By 1933, the Lewis gun was somewhat outdated but still widely used. Over 50,000 were produced during World War I, and many remained in military and police arsenals worldwide. The British had officially replaced it with the Bren gun by the 1930s, but Lewis guns served throughout World War II. Their reliability in desert conditions made them popular in North Africa, which fits perfectly with our Egyptian setting. What the film gets right is the Lewis gun's role as a support weapon. Its sustained fire capability made it perfect for covering advances or defending positions. The distinctive rattling sound of Lewis gunfire, caused by its unique gas operation system, is accurately portrayed. The gun's ability to maintain accurate fire while mounted on moving vehicles, as shown in the chase scenes, was one of its major advantages over heavier machine guns. Loch Na, one of our villains, carries the classic Colt single-action Army revolver. This might be the most iconic handgun in American history, often called the Peacemaker or Colt 45. Introduced in 1873, the single-action Army became the standard U.S. military sidearm and the gun that won the West, at least according to Colt's marketing department. The single-action Army was a massive leap forward in revolver design when introduced. Its solid frame construction was stronger than earlier cap and ball revolvers, and the self-contained metallic cartridges made reloading much faster. The standard barrel length was 7.5 inches for cavalry use, though 4.75 and 5.5-inch barrels became more popular for civilian carry. By 1933, the single-action Army had been officially replaced in U.S. military service for decades, but thousands remained in civilian hands. Colt had actually discontinued production in 1940 to focus on more modern designs, though they would resume production in 1956 due to popular demand fueled by Western movies and television shows. Original first-generation Colts from before 1940 are highly prized by collectors today. The film shows Loch Ness using the classic one-handed cocking technique, where the shooter uses their palm to fan the hammer while keeping their finger on the trigger. This technique, while fast, was actually discouraged by serious gunfighters who valued accuracy over speed. The more common technique was to cock the hammer with the thumb of the shooting hand while maintaining a proper grip. What's interesting about Loch Ness's choice of weapon is that by 1933, the single-action army was already considered old-fashioned. Double-action revolvers and semi-automatic pistols offered faster reloading and higher capacity. However, the Colt's simple mechanism and powerful cartridges, typically .45 Colt or .4440 Winchester, made it utterly reliable and effective. Many old-timers preferred them well into the 20th century. Here's where things get interesting from a historical accuracy perspective. The film shows several characters using what appears to be Browning high-power pistols. This creates an anachronism since the high power wasn't released commercially until 1935, 2 years after our movie takes place. However, this gives us a chance to explore what pistols characters would have actually used in 1933. The Browning high power was John Browning's last pistol design, completed after his death by Dieudonné Sive at FN in Belgium. It was revolutionary for its 13-round magazine capacity, double that of most contemporary pistols. By 1933, prototypes existed but weren't available commercially. Characters in our film would more likely carry the FN model 1922 or 1910, both Browning designs that were widely available. If we assume the props department needed a substitute for period-correct pistols, the high power makes sense. It has the same general appearance as earlier Browning designs, but was more readily available for film use. The high power would go on to serve in more armies than any other pistol design, seeing use from World War II through the present day. The 9mm Parabellum cartridge the high power fired was already well established by 1933. German Luger pistols had popularized the round since 1902, and many European pistols chambered it. The cartridge offered a good balance of power, capacity, and controllability. By the 1930s, it was becoming clear that 9mm would challenge larger calibers for military adoption. What the film accurately portrays is the evolution of combat pistols toward higher capacity and faster reloading. By 1933, the revolver era was ending for military use, though revolvers remained popular with civilians. Semi-automatic pistols offered faster follow-up shots and quicker reloading with spare magazines. This transition period makes our 1933 setting particularly interesting for weapons enthusiasts. Now let's examine the traditional weapons used by the Medjay warriors. These include curved swords, spears, and various blade weapons that connect to Egypt's actual historical armament. The curved swords appear to be inspired by the shamshir, a Persian design that spread throughout the Middle East and North Africa. These sabers featured pronounced curves that made them excellent slashing weapons from horseback. The shamshir's design evolved over centuries of mounted warfare. The curve allowed riders to slash at enemies while galloping past without the blade getting stuck. The narrow blade and sharp point also made these swords effective for thrusting. By the 1930s, traditional swords were largely ceremonial, but remote tribes and groups like our fictional Medjay might have maintained martial traditions. The spears used by Medjay warriors appear to be based on traditional Arab lances. These weapons typically measured 10 to 14 feet long, with leaf-shaped steel points. The shaft was usually made from bamboo or other flexible wood that wouldn't shatter on impact. Mounted warriors could couch these lances under their arms for devastating charges or use them overhand for throwing. What's particularly interesting is how the film blends fantasy with historical reality. While an ancient secret society guarding supernatural threats is fictional, the weapons they use are grounded in real Middle Eastern martial traditions. The combination of firearms and traditional weapons reflects how many tribal groups adapted to changing times while maintaining cultural practices. The Medjay's use of both modern and traditional weapons actually reflects historical patterns in the region. During the 1920s and 1930s, Many Bedouin and other tribal groups adopted firearms while still maintaining traditional weapons for certain purposes. Swords and daggers remained important for ceremonies and close combat, while rifles became essential for longer-range engagements. Finally, we need to discuss the explosive devices seen throughout the film. Dynamite and hand grenades make several appearances, and their presence in 1933 Egypt is entirely plausible. Dynamite, invented by Alfred Nobel in 1867, had become the standard explosive for construction and mining by the 1930s. Its stable nature compared to nitroglycerin made it relatively safe to transport and use. The stick dynamite shown in the film appears to be standard commercial blasting dynamite. By 1933, various formulations existed, but most contained nitroglycerin absorbed in diatomaceous earth with stabilizers. A single stick typically contained about half a pound of explosive material. The fuses shown are probably standard safety fuses that burned at about 30 seconds per foot, giving users time to reach safety. The hand grenades in the film appear to be Mills bombs, the standard British fragmentation grenade. Developed in 1915, the Mills bomb featured a distinctive pineapple exterior designed to fragment into shrapnel. The number 36 variant, introduced in 1918, would have been standard British issue in 1933. These grenades had a 4-second fuse after the pin was pulled and lever released. What the film gets right about explosives is their devastating effect in confined spaces. The blast pressure from dynamite or grenades in tombs and tunnels would be magnified compared to open-air explosions. The fragmentation effects of grenades would be particularly lethal as shrapnel ricocheted off stone walls. This makes our hero's survival of multiple explosions somewhat miraculous, but adds to the pulp adventure atmosphere. By 1933, explosives were heavily regulated but still accessible to mining companies and construction firms. Black market explosives from military surplus after World War I were also available to those with connections. The presence of both military grenades and commercial dynamite in our adventure suggests our characters have access to multiple sources of supply, fitting their international treasure-hunting lifestyle. There you have it. Every weapon from The Mummy Returns analyzed and explained. From Rick's Thompson submachine guns to ancient Medjay swords, this sequel expanded on the original's arsenal while maintaining that perfect blend of historical grounding and pulp adventure fun. What's your favorite weapon from the film? Let me know in the comments and tell me what movie's weapons you'd like to see analyzed next. If I missed any weapons or got any details wrong, drop a comment and help make this the definitive guide to the Mummy Returns arsenal. Don't forget to subscribe for more movie weapon breakdowns, and check out our analysis of the original Mummy's weapons if you haven't already. Until next time, keep your Thompson loaded and watch out for ancient curses.